What's up, Psychonauts, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I have Akaya Lynn. She has many, many years of experience with plant medicine, and I am so grateful to be chatting with her and just expanding on integrity within ceremony and finding the right facilitators and really diving into how transformative this work is and the medicine. Welcome, Akaya, to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am very delighted to be here and to share with your community.
Yeah, this one's going to be good because when we first chatted, just the introduction chat, it was about finding the right facilitators and like how truly important that is, especially being a female who wants to find a ceremony or even start doing this type of work because it's so important. And not everyone wants to be a facilitator. And those who do, finding the right teachers, finding the stuff that vibes with you is so important. So let's talk about how did you even get into this work and how did plant medicine find you?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Well, plants have always been a big part of my life. I was brought up in nature, always exploring, always curious about the natural world. And my life took me into health and wellness. I was a nurse for a number of years. While I was training as a nurse, I was working in different clinical settings. And eventually, I became a registered nurse and really just wanted to be of service to people to support them in their wellness and in healing. And I quickly found out that Western medicine was lacking in some of the ways that I wanted to be present and to support people holistically beyond just the physical dimension of what health looks like. And so during that time, I started to explore other modalities and eventually came into learning about ayahuasca through a book, actually. And it was something that just instantly struck a chord. Everything about the ceremony, working with plants as spirits, cultivating and connecting to their wise intelligence, it just sang to me, and I knew it was something that I wanted to explore. Long story short, I ended up in the Amazon, and sadly, my first experience with the medicine was a very far cry from what I had hoped it would be. Fortunately, it wasn't anything traumatic, but it really fell short of what I'd hoped it would be. And so it wasn't until I came back to Canada that I connected with certain community and was invited to participate. And I was invited by someone that I really trusted, so I decided to give it another shot. And in those 2 nights of ceremonies, everything just opened up for me, and I knew this is something that I wanted to learn and explore more. At that time, I didn't know that I wanted to become a curandera. I just knew I wanted to learn from the plants. And so shortly after that, I started to deepen in the tradition of vegetalismo, the Shipibo Conobo people of the Peruvian Amazon. They have a specific way of working with plant medicines. And I entered into my first plant dieta, and that was about 13 years ago. And since then, the plants have just taken me on this journey, and it's been a wild ride. It's been difficult. It's been tremendously healing. It's been beautiful, and it continues to reveal its mystery and magic to me over the years. And I haven't turned back, and I continue to deepen and learn from the plant teachers themselves.
That's amazing. And I've talked to a few people now that have worked with the Shipibo tribe. So what is it about that tribe that like so many people, because I don't know anything about it besides the interviews that I'm doing, like that draws people in to learn from them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. The Shipibo have really preserved their culture. They've been through a lot traditionally, and for whatever reason, they're a warrior tribe. They've been warriors in the past, and they managed to maintain their traditional medicinal practices and keep them intact. And through their generosity and kindness, they've shared it with the world. And I think there's something really special about this tradition. Firstly, that's what drew me to it. It was ayahuasca that was attractive, but it was the whole medical tradition surrounding the work with ayahuasca that I found highly fascinating, which is known as the practice of the dietas. So the dietas are where we enter into a spiritual relationship with particular plants. And by entering into this context with them, we are able to tap into their wisdom, their intelligence through our own field, through our body, through our energetic field, to not only learn from them, but to move through traumas in our bodies, to move through blockages that are holding us back, to gain insight about ourselves, to develop and grow spiritually, and ultimately to evolve. And so I feel it's this tradition that, and this particular practice of working with the dietas that makes the Shipibo unique. They're not the only ones that do dietas. There are other indigenous groups that work similarly with the dieta, but the Shipibo Kanabo people are the ones that are really known for this type of practice.
Hmm. I would love for you to let people know what a dieta is, because I'm sure there's lots of people that are like, why does she keep saying that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so to me, the core of the tradition itself are the dietas. It's to me, it's that's where the juiciness is. Yes, we can receive a lot of healing and a lot of benefit from sitting in ceremony with ayahuasca. We can learn a lot about ourselves. Um, but to me, sitting with ayahuasca, we're just kind of dipping our foot into the mysterious world of the
Mm.
plants. So the dietas are basically a contract in a sense where we are agreeing to abstain from many different things in our day-to-day life. We follow a very, very strict diet. It really depends on what plant or tree we are communing with. Um, but typically, the diet itself is very, very strict. No salt, no spices, no sugar, no oils or fats, uh, no green vegetables, sometimes no fruit at all. Oftentimes, like no meats, no dairies. It's a very, very strict food diet. We're also abstaining from social interactions. We're not on Facebook or watching Netflix. So, all social media and media in general, we abstain from, all the way to not having physical touch with other people. So, the strictest form a person would be in isolation for a prolonged period of time, usually in silence. And during that time that we're in isolation or in silence, we are working with a particular plant. And so in the Shipibo tradition, there are a number of plants that they consider master plants, plants that hold a particular energetic pattern, a specific gift, a certain knowledge that we can tune into when we connect with them. And so the dietas sometimes last anywhere from 10 days up into a year long or more, where we are in this very specific container of abstinence from all the day-to-day distractions. And the ayahuasca acts as a channel where in ceremony a person will receive the connection of that particular plant that they're going to be working with. The shaman or the healer will connect them to that plant spirit. And then over the course of a period of time, again, 10 days, 2 weeks, months to a year, we are developing a relationship with that plant spirit. And each plant has its capacity to help us move through patterns and difficulties, blockages, whether they be physical, emotional, or spiritual, to help us evolve. And once the dieta itself is closed, so there's an opening and a closing that's done with ayahuasca in ceremony. Once that's closed, a person will integrate that plant medicine into their life, and it becomes an ally. It becomes a teacher. It becomes a guide that we can continue to turn to for support throughout our lives.
Oh, I love that. I love that you actually get to connect with the plant before ingesting the plant. Like that to me is so powerful and such an important piece that is missing in like the Western culture, right? Like we don't connect with anything we do. Like we just ingest. And like to take that break from everything and actually come to center and come to yourself is so important. And we're missing it.
Exactly. I think we live in a culture where, as you said, we are a culture of consumption, and everywhere you turn, we are bombarded with distractions. And so in this world, it's really hard for us to tune in to the subtleties of nature, the subtleties within, when we are constantly in a perceptual mode of being external and being outside of ourselves. So the dieta really provides a space for us to explore the internal landscape of what's within. And naturally, when we abstain from everything, all the distractions fall away, all the things that we turn to for crutches, to cope, to pacify, to avoid, to turn away from. When all those things fall away, what's left is ourselves. And in a long dieta, they say that everything comes up. We get to learn about ourselves, and it's not always comfortable. It's certainly not always fun, but it's incredibly enriching, and the plants get to guide us in that. And so it's a really beautiful opportunity, especially in the world that we live in today. Very few of us have that opportunity or take the opportunity to turn within fully.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah.
This is only the beginning of the conversation. Um,
Uh-huh.
okay, so what led you from like going into ceremony to wanting to facilitate and help lead ceremonies?
Well, to be honest, it happened naturally. After a few rounds of working with a medicine, just personally and in my own journey, I was led to start doing dietas. So my first dieta I did was 3 months long. And at that time, it just was a natural thing to do, was to continue to explore myself, was to continue to explore this tradition. Um, and I was fairly young at the time. I mean, I would say I was about 25 years old, and eventually my journey led me south of the border. I ended up in Peru. Um, and that experience actually changed my life entirely. And partly what it is that we're wanting to talk about here too is around safety and knowing your practitioners and being really cognizant of who we expose ourselves to. And in
Mm-hmm.
this ceremonial context, I had a very difficult experience in Peru. And so upon returning, I kind of looked for different avenues to support me. And eventually I found a very amazing person who's become a dear friend, and he's also become a mentor. And you could say that he just scooped me up and really helped me to make sense of the experience that had happened down there. And in a short period of time, he asked me to start supporting him. So I'd had a number of years of experience, personal experience of working in ceremonies on myself, plus doing a number of dietas, and then slowly began to be a support person for him in ceremony. And then after that, I started organizing. And from there, it just step by step have developed a really amazing relationship with him. And we work together now doing ceremonies together, as well as I'm beginning to branch off and starting to do my own ceremonies as well. So
Hmm.
I feel that the plants just really took me and guided the whole process. I feel like it really happened naturally. And that being said, there was an initiation by fire for sure. However, it's shaped me as a practitioner, and it's helped to build my medicine. I feel sometimes in life, not just with medicine, the experiences that we have in life can feel like poison, and it becomes our responsibility to turn that poison into medicine and something that we get to share with other people.
Mm-hmm. So are you open to sharing like what happened and like how did you find the people that you had the bad experience with in Peru?
Yeah, so, I ended up down there because I deferred my trust. And what I mean by that is I felt I had a degree of trust for a practitioner, and without really exploring too much further about his teacher, who was in Peru, because I felt trust for this practitioner, I decided to just jump on an airplane, go down to Peru. And to me at that time, it just made sense. Well, if I'm trusting this person, it makes sense that I would also trust his teacher, his maestro. And
Mm,
so I ended up down in Peru, and sadly, my first impression when I arrived at the center there was to turn around and run away. And that little voice of intuition, I dismissed. And
mm,
sadly, I ended up in a center that was not safe, particularly not safe to women.
mhm,
And at the time, it was a very confusing experience. Without going into too many details, but um, it really was a traumatic experience for me, um, and something that it took some time for me to make sense of. But ultimately, that not every person who claims to be a healer and presents to be a healer is actually walking with the medicine in integrity, no matter how well known they are.
mhm,
And ultimately, it's up to us to do our research and to really look into um, people as practitioners. And just because they're Indigenous, just because they represent a culture and a world that we revere, doesn't necessarily mean that they are a person that we can trust. And so, um, yeah, I think that's what I'd like to say about that experience.
yeah, yeah, and it's sad that you trusted this person and then you went in and it wasn't what you wanted it to be. So then moving forward, you found this person who just like took you under their wing and helped you. So what was that experience like? And then like moving forward, did you find other practitioners or did you just stay with this person that like took you under their wing?
Yeah, so the person who took me under his wing, and my mentor and friend, he had had a similar experience in working with this particular person in the Amazon. And so we were able to relate on that level, just in terms of, I guess, what I would consider the shadow side, not of ayahuasca. I don't necessarily believe that ayahuasca has a shadow, but the people that work with the medicine can have a shadow, of course. And
Mhm.
so we both fell into that. And so we were able to really relate on that level. And um, for me, it really just helped to put a lot of context into the experience. We're working with a psychedelic plant that alters our consciousness, and in a lot of ways, we can become very intoxicated um, with the medicine. We become very impressionable, and it really does the medicine, as much as it's powerful for us to receive healing and benefits, we also open ourselves up to so much if we're not really aware of what's going on. And so at that time, I wasn't aware fully of what I was exposing myself to and the ways in which this practitioner in Peru was manipulating. And so
Mm,
it was only through connecting with my mentor now that I was able to put these things into context and understand that actually what had happened to me was not okay, and was actually completely wrong. And not only was it happening to me, it was happening to many other women,
mm,
and all over, particularly with this shaman himself, but with other women and in other circles all over the place. It's not an uncommon occurrence. So having that connection with him allowed me to work through and process many, many, many layers of that experience. The trauma went quite deep. And so it took years to be able to unravel a lot of that. and to clear energetically
Mhm.
the imprints of it. And it's still something that continues to teach me these days. You know, it's a trauma, I guess you could say, a trauma, a wound of some kind. At the core of it is medicine, and
Mhm.
it's like an onion that continues to reveal teachings, to reveal different aspects of itself to me as I grow and evolve as a practitioner as well.
Mhm. So if someone, a woman, was looking to go to Peru to sit with this medicine, what type of research would you recommend that she do before going and finding a space to sit in ceremony?
Right. Yeah, it's really tricky, to be honest, because now medicine has become such a fad. It's sexy,
Mm,
right? It's and not just ayahuasca, but all the plants, the mushrooms, the psychedelics, the ketamine, whatever it is. It's very juicy, it's very sexy, it's become the thing. And so, you know, it's really tricky now to just look at a website and go, okay, sure, they've got the Shipibo healers. They look Shipibo, they present themselves in a certain way, they sing Ikaros, you know, we can kind
mhm,
of tick off all these boxes of what we think it's going to look like. Um, but really, we don't necessarily know until we've gone down. And so I personally don't recommend that people just sign up and go down to a center without knowing somebody firsthand that's
yeah.
actually been to the center, that
Mhm.
can make referrals and without a doubt say this is a safe place. And unless people really have a sense of what to look for, it may also be hard to point out what is safe and what isn't safe, what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. For me, again, I had to learn the hard way. I didn't know either where that therapeutic line was of what's appropriate and what's not.
Mhm.
And so to look at websites and to just decide to go, I think is risky. I know people will do it and people do it and have amazing experiences. And so it's tricky. But again, there's really only one place that I recommend people go to. And I know I'm biased because it's the place that I go. But having been through what I've been through, there's very few people that I am actually willing to refer people to go to, just
Mm.
because I know that there is a lot of falsity out there. There's a lot of persuasion. There's not everything is as it appears, unfortunately, in this world with medicine.
Yeah, and like how you're saying it's sexy. I'm definitely seeing a trend with like people and their healing journey right now that it's like it's trending, which I'm like, I hope that it's not brief and that this is something that people continue to do, like not only with plant medicine, but like with breath work, with ice dips, with meditations, like just implementing these things into their lives and like living and embodying that. So what are your thoughts on like how it's kind of trending right now? I know I have my own opinion, but that's my opinion.
Right. I personally am reticent. You know, on one hand, I see the consciousness of plants and particularly ayahuasca and even psilocybin moving out into the world and wanting to connect, wanting to support and help people in their evolution, in their spiritual growth. And certainly they have an incredible capacity to do that. And so on one hand, um, it's really inspiring to witness. And on the other hand, there is a part of me that braces because I know that for me, what it takes to become a practitioner to work in these realms
Mhm,
is incredibly involved. And now it seems that because of the legalization or decriminalization of psilocybin and cannabis, particularly in Canada and in other states, I believe in the US, anyone now can present themselves and say, I do psilocybin ceremonies, and
mhm,
they sing beautiful songs, they play beautiful music, they maybe even have a degree of therapeutic background in counseling or therapy. And not to put down any of those things, I think those are all useful. However, we need to also understand the shamanic context that these plants operate in and what they induce. And there's an incredible risk when we sit with someone who isn't trained in the shamanic realm, that not only as a participant exposing ourselves to these medicines and energies in a space, people can leave with energies that they didn't come with, for
Hmm.
example, can be impacted by energies that are in the space and can re-traumatize, of course. When spaces aren't held adequately, there can be aspects of neglect, which can lead to harm in various capacities. And also, as practitioners, people who are facilitating, I think it's worth mentioning that when people aren't experienced in these shamanic realms, the practitioner themselves is actually incredibly at risk of picking up
Hmm.
energies that can have a detrimental effect on them over time. And
Yeah.
so, for me, it's amazing, and yet there's just so much happening now that it seems mushroom circles are everywhere you turn. Someone's offering some sort of entheogen in a capacity, in a circle with people that aren't necessarily adequately trained, in my opinion. And again, there's risks involved in that.
Yeah, not only like physical risks, but like you said, the spiritual realm too, which
Mhm.
is so incredibly important, like closing the circle and making sure that like even opening the circle, like going
Mhm.
to the very beginning of the ceremony, where the facilitator's at and their integrity and their energy and what are they bringing in, and then making sure that you're closing that at the very end of the evening, right?
Exactly. There's so much involved. Energetic hygiene, does the practitioner have really clear boundaries? Um, are they clear themselves? Have they done the self work, what it takes to really know themselves well enough to be a clear conduit for these medicines as they come into the space? What happens when someone goes into difficulty, physical, emotional, or spiritual? Are they able to support that journey?
Mhm.
Yeah, there's so much involved. And to be honest, the deeper I go with this tradition and the deeper I go with this training, the more I pause and question and sit back and go, is this something that I am capable of continuing to hold? Because the shamanic world it's so big, and I think it's a health thing to inquire about, and to really sit with our capacity, because if we aren't questioning, we aren't learning, and we kind of reach a plateau when we think that we know everything. And for me, it's a very humbling path. And I've seen a lot of things in ceremony with different people having different difficult experiences. And if we aren't allowing the medicines to humble us, I think we develop tremendous blind spots, and those blind spots can come back to not only hurt ourselves, but can also cause harm and hurt other people that are coming into our space.
Mhm. So within that, finding the facilitators, like if you found someone and like you're thinking that they resonate, what are, for me, this is my favorite question, like red flags, green flags, like questions to ask people when you're looking to go into something this like, because it's deep spiritual work. Like you're not
Mhm.
just going to like get on a hallucinogenic, right? Like you want to do that, go do it recreationally. Like this is actually to go in and like go into the traumas. And so what are questions that you would recommend people asking once they're like, hey, I want to sit in ceremony with this person?
Right. I think there's certain things that are really useful. And the first thing I would say is getting a referral. And I know
Yeah.
it may be tricky. There may be people out there that are like, I really want to sit, but they don't necessarily know anybody just yet. And so you have to be patient. It will come. It is getting more and more common out there. That being said, having a referral brings a first level of reassurance that somebody who's been to that space. They can vouch and say, I've had a good experience. It felt safe. I felt safe. And therefore, I would refer you to these people. So I would say less likely is it to just jump in blind and sit with people that you don't know anybody, that has been through that experience.
Mhm.
And for us, what we do, the way that we work is we also screen people quite specifically. So we have an application form, and I think this is also a good sign that the practitioners who you're sitting with, they know what they're doing. They're screening people because not everybody is actually fit physically, emotionally, spiritually to jump into an experience like this, either with ayahuasca or other entheogens. The practitioner should be looking for medical health history. They're going to want to know about your mental, emotional health history, what your trauma history is, what your experience with other plant medicines are. So, someone that's a practitioner who is wanting to screen you before coming into their circle shows that there's another kind of checkpoint, that not only is that practitioner ensuring that you as a participant are safe to come in and sit, but that the practitioner is protecting themselves too. So it kind of, it goes both ways. So I think that's an important piece, is that the practitioner is collecting a lot of information and screening people prior to coming in. We
Mhm.
take that a step further and we have consultation calls with everyone who wants to join us. And again, that's just another checkpoint. Not only do we as practitioners get to meet the person that's wanting to join, what are their intentions, what is it that's drawing them to this work, but you as a participant, you get to meet that person too. And in that call, are you feeling safe? Are you feeling something's a little off there?
Mhm.
How does it feel to be having this conversation with this person? What's the felt sense? So again, you as a participant get the opportunity to meet that practitioner and ask the questions that you feel are important to ask. So, on that line, what are some important questions to ask? I think knowing what a practitioner's background is, of course, is important. Where have they received their training from? How long have they been training for? Do they have training in other complementary practices, like psychotherapy, of course? Any type of therapy is helpful. Medical backgrounds, um, other training that would just support and kind of create more of a well-rounded practitioner. Um, have they put in the time? And do they have someone that, is there someone that can also vouch for them? If you really are not sure, is there someone else that you can contact that they can make a referral to that can speak about them personally? Um, and so you're getting another referral if you're needing that. I think these are all really useful questions to ask. And yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's definitely very, very important. Instead of, yeah, I've done mushrooms a couple of times, like come sit with me. Like, no, that's recreation. And what type of ceremony are you actually looking for? So
Mhm.
that's so, so, so important. Do you want to talk about your time in Costa Rica? Are you open to
Sure.
that?
Well, in Costa Rica, or you mean in Peru?
Oh my goodness. Can we talk about both?
Yeah, definitely. Well, Costa Rica is where we have a retreat center,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. So Costa Rica, I'm a part of a community down there. We have a retreat center called Tierra Valiente, Brave Earth. And so people can definitely check out online the website. And so we do retreats in Costa Rica. We often will host extended dietas there where people can come. It is an amazingly beautiful place. It's pretty bougie, it's very comfortable, and set in the jungle, and different types of dwellings and spaces for people to be in. The retreats that we do there are often done in silence again, where we're working with particular plant teachers
Mhm.
that are recommended to each person. So, based on what your intention is, what it is that you're looking to explore in your life, um, you would share those intentions with us, and then we would select an appropriate plant for you to work with and develop a relationship with over a period of time. And of course, that's also working with ayahuasca over that 11, 12-day period. And so, yeah, we do offer these retreats down there in Costa Rica.
Yeah, which is amazing. What about the like your time that you just spent in Costa Rica and what you just got to embark on, the journey that you
Right.
just embarked
So
on?
that was in Peru.
Oh, that was in Peru.
That was in Peru.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that because that's just to me, I'm like, I don't know if I could do it.
Right. Well, it's something that I've been preparing for a number of years. And so again, on the line of who's qualified and who's fit to serve medicine, who gets to decide, right? And I think in the world that we're in now, a lot of people, as you said, I drank ayahuasca twice. The medicine told me I should start serving ceremonies. It's actually not,
Hmm.
uncommon, surprisingly, or mushrooms or whatever, and then people get going. And so, but for me and in the tradition and the lineage that I've been brought up in, um, I've been working with medicine for 13 years now and have been dieting for many of those years. I have a cumulative of about 2.5 years of plant dietas. And the most recent one was a year-long isolation dieta in the Amazon with my maestro, Ricardo
Mm.
Amaringo.
Hmm. So what did that entail?
So, yeah, basically it's similar to what I explained earlier. The dieta is where we're abstaining from basically everything you can possibly imagine, and then some. I knew I was going to have to make a number of sacrifices for this experience, but it required a lot more than I had anticipated. So it was a year in the Amazon. I was living in a tiny little, maybe 3 meter by 3 meter little hut with a wooden floor, mosquito nets for walls, and a thatch roof, no electricity, in the jungle, and very little contact with other people. So I was in isolation. Um, I was able to speak to my partner and also my teacher, but predominantly was in silence. I wasn't on my phone or on the website, on the internet. I wasn't listening to music. And then following a very strict diet. So
Mhm.
I was eating oatmeal, rice, and lentils, plantains, potatoes. And for the first 9 months, I ate fish, a traditional fish called bocachico. I'm actually a vegan. And
Mhm.
so I had to make this shift to eat fish for the process because I was too afraid to go a whole year without any fat or dense protein.
Mhm.
But after about 9 months, I couldn't do it anymore. So I stopped. And the last 3 months, I just did the rice and lentils. No salt, everything cooked over a fire, no
Mm.
seasoning, as boring as and bland as it can be. And I sat in silence in meditation for that year, communing with two trees that I worked with over that
Mm.
period of time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, you probably got so much knowledge from those trees.
It
Oh my goodness.
continues to unfold. Yeah, it
Yeah.
continues to unfold. I mean, it's interesting because the journey itself, for sure there was difficulty. The first 3 months were really hard. I would say working a lot with ayahuasca in those first few months with my teacher, cleaning, 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 purifying, all kinds of stuff coming up. When we sit in this type of context, again, a big part of the journey is that everything comes up, everything. And when you're in that journey, in this process for a year, it really creates a lot of space for all of our little things to come up.
Mm.
And we get to learn about ourselves. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's not always comfortable. So the first few months were definitely very, very challenging. Um, it takes a while for the mind to slow down. We are so used to operating in a very fast pace in the world that we live in. And so
Mhm.
for me, it took a good 3, 4 months for the mind to settle. But once it does, it's exquisite to just be in the jungle, snakes coming around. I had one day there was a black and yellow poisonous snake coiled up around the base of my tambo. I was about a meter from within it with it. Um, you know, when the rain falls, the whole area just fills with humidity and smells, and you're just exposed to nature. You're just in it. And
Mm,
time becomes very fluid, and we think we know what time is because we're so used to time from our clocks and our watches and our cell phones, but time completely changes when we
mhm,
slow down, and all there is the rhythm and pace of nature, the rising and the falling of the sun, the leaves falling, the stars coming out, the moon growing
mhm,
and getting smaller. So um, it was it was an incredibly precious experience, that's for sure.
mhm. So was your partner there with you, or like did you have a phone that you could?
He was there for most of the time. The first 3 months he was away, and then he was there, yeah, at about the 3 4 month mark. And so he was in another building on his own, and he was working, and so he was
Mhm,
able to kind of take care of us in that way. And so I was able to see him when I needed to, and then times where I would go in isolation and quite quiet for periods of time. But it was great having him there, so I
mm,
didn't have to venture on my phone at all, really, or very, very little, other than to keep in touch with family from time to time.
that's amazing. And you recently did this.
Yeah, so I just got home. I got home the beginning of May. So I actually closed, the diet was on March 21st with spring equinox. So I've been integrating the process. And again, it's something that's continuing to evolve. In my mind, when I knew I was going to do this, it was like, to me, the hardest part was going to be the doing it.
Mhm,
All I could think about was the diet and a whole year. And then once that diet closed at the year mark, then it was going to be coming out into the world was going to be easy. But surprisingly, the easy part was the actual dieta, the diet itself. That was
yeah.
easy. Coming out into the world again has been incredibly challenging. It's been rich, and there's been a lot of learning involved in it, and it's
Mhm,
been challenging for sure. The pace of the world, I never realized how fast and demanding and charged it is until I
mhm,
came back into the world and was like blown away. Like, wow, we move so quickly. Everything is happening so fast. And
mhm.
it took it took a while for me to settle in. I wanted to run away. Not necessarily back to the jungle, but I just wanted to run back and be quiet somewhere because it was
Mhm.
very overwhelming.
So, what's been the biggest struggle? And then what's been the biggest win from this experience? Like, you're still obviously integrating and experiencing. And I feel like that's something you'll just continue to implement into your life. But biggest struggle and biggest win that you've noticed since you've been back?
Yeah, that's a great question. The biggest struggle, I would say, is finding the way to continue to stay rooted in the richness of the experience that I had and what I learned, and that place of centeredness, of calmness, of clarity, of
Mhm,
peace, staying rooted in that medicine while being in a world and a context that feels very juxtaposed. It feels very contradictory in a lot of ways, and how to stay true to who I am as the person that I cultivated over that year while still operating in this world and being in the world.
mhm,
And so that's something that I'm still navigating. And of course, there's ups and downs, and it's all learning. But that's the richness of the integration process. And a lot of people talk about
mhm,
integration and what does that mean and how does that look when we have a big ceremony, we have a big journey and a process. How do we integrate that? And I think for me, that's been a big part of the learning. I thought I knew what integration was prior to doing this, but because it's been such a big process, such a big journey, a whole year, like you have no idea how long a year is until
mm,
you're sitting in one place. Cold showers, your food comes every day, same thing every day, nothing changes, and you're just in this space. We have no idea how long a year actually is and what that feels like until you're in it. And then coming out of that, um, how to how to maintain the medicine and the juiciness and
Mm,
still bring it forward into this life and into this world. And so the challenge, I think, is for me just figuring that out. And again, because the world doesn't necessarily appreciate certain qualities that I think I've cultivated in the diet, things like stillness, peace.
mhm,
You know, we got to pay bills, we got to work, we got to do all these things. And so finding that balance and maintaining that connection to the medicine that I cultivated during the diet has been the challenge.
mhm,
But what have I cultivated, and what's been the biggest taking point is I feel like I've learned a lot about myself in that process,
yeah,
and now it's a matter of how to be that person in the world. And again, so to me, it's like the takeaway and the challenge are actually overlaid. They're the same thing in a way. Um, how do I continue to show up in the world as authentic as I can, with as much integrity as I can, while the tests and challenges are actually quite present, and they're big and they're full, and yet um, it's what helps us to grow. And
mhm.
so for me, it's how do I bring that medicine out into the world and maintain that connection to the roots that I cultivated during the diet. I hope that makes sense.
It does. And it's so beautiful. It's like your, what is it? Your biggest struggle is like you're also your biggest hero. And like, how do you bring that to the world and like, you know, create with it? So,
Exactly, exactly. And I think it's
yeah.
something that's going to continue to evolve for years and years. I'm sense that it's, you know, for this medicine that I cultivated in the dieta, it's going to take years for it to mature.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah. It's like you just gave birth to this new version of you, right? And it's like you're just a
right.
baby still.
Exactly, exactly. And how do you continue to um, share that with the world, and also feed it and nourish it and not lose touch with it? And
Mhm.
so, yeah, the trees that I'm dieting are continuing to show me different ways to do that, which is exciting. So,
Mhm. I'd love to touch more on you about the integration piece, because I know people who go to ceremony and then like Monday they're going to work again. What would you recommend for somebody, like if they can and they have the time, like when they're doing this, to give themselves like that space for integration afterwards, and like what tools they can implement into their life when they do go through this big experience?
yeah, wonderful question. Um, Yeah, I think spaciousness as much as possible is really key. If people are able to give themselves a little bit of time post ceremony on either end, a day to prepare, at least a day to transition, that's of course ideal. If not more time, but not everybody is able to do that. And so people do find themselves going into ceremony, having a weekend, and then, like you said, Monday morning or Tuesday back to work. For me, key daily practice, cultivating a daily practice. There's many different modalities out there, and everyone is unique. I'm a meditator. I love to meditate, and having a daily practice is a touch tone. It's a touch point for me every day to check in. Where am I at? And so I really suggest that people have a daily practice where they're able to continue. It's like maintaining a thread from that experience that drives us forward, but still keeps us connected to these very powerful experiences. Journaling and writing, reflecting on the journeys that we've had, talking and sharing with others in community, ways to stay connected to other people, whether it be the practitioner or people that we've met over a weekend, staying in touch with them. I think we live in a world again where we live quite isolated lives, and a lot of people, I think, are turning to the medicines because there's community involved around these types of circles. And so, how can we continue to stay in touch with people that are on similar paths? Um, You mentioned breath work, acupuncture,
Mm,
working with plant medicines. So I'm also an herbalist, and that's what I do outside of the ceremony work is working with people with plants. So connecting to plants in any way can help to grow our spirits, grow our bodies, our minds, and help us to evolve. Um, Spending time in nature, and really being gentle with ourselves. But certainly, I think daily practice, having some daily practice that we feel is enriching, um, is an important piece in the integration.
hmm Yeah, definitely. I love all of that. I would love to talk to you a little bit more about the herbalism too, because like it's not only the psychedelic plants, it is like the herbs that we bring into our life that help us like up level as well and connect. So I'd love for you to touch on like connecting with just medicinal use of plant medicines.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's again just kind of segueing from the work with ayahuasca and why the dietas are so key is because we get to meet all these other plant spirits and plant helpers and plant friends. And so, herbalism is similar to that in a way. We can connect with plants on a daily basis, whether it be rose or Tulsi is one that I'm working with right now and connecting with holy basil, amazing, super wise plant and how we can bring the teachings of these plants into our day-to-day life. So, of course, that can be through working with a practitioner where they're making a recommendation and a protocol for a person based on what's going on for them physically, emotionally, spiritually, and that there's a formula. But we can also, as individuals, go out in nature, or if you're not familiar with identification of plants, um, begin to learn about a specific plant. Maybe there's one that's calling to us at a certain time in our life. And I like to use rose as an example because who doesn't love rose? And so just by looking at a plant, the characteristics of it, where does it grow? What does it smell like? What does it taste like?
Mm.
Um, exploring plants in this way can reveal a lot to us about their medicine and a lot to us about how they can support us. And, before we go out into the woods and start tasting and eating plants, of course, we have to be cautious. We have to know what it is that we're eating. We have to know what part of the plant is medicinal. So we do have to be careful there. But in general, most people can connect with a plant spirit. We can go to the health food store and buy Tulsi tea and sit every day for 5-10 minutes, drink a cup of tea, and feel the consciousness of that plant in our body.
Mm.
What do we feel? Do we feel a warming in our body? How does it affect our mind? How does it affect our heart? What's actually happening. And in this way, we can develop relationships with plants that are working on that subtle realm, but are outside of the context of the dieta. So we don't have to be in a dieta to connect to the plant consciousness. There's
Yeah.
many ways that we can do that in our day-to-day life.
Hmm. I love that so much because, like, I think that's important for this podcast too, for people to realize, like, it's not just plant medicine. Like, the magic is literally like all around us. Like, that's why I have so many plants in my house, right? It's because
Mhm.
it's literally everywhere once you start paying attention to it. The animals that are in your realm, the birds that are in the sky, like, just embracing it and bringing it all in is like that's the magic when we finally start to connect ourselves with all of this stuff that's like right in front of us.
Exactly, exactly. Hmm.
Hmm. This has been so good. So, so good. I love it. Okay. So, if people are looking to find you, if they want to work with you in Costa Rica, how do they find you?
Yeah, great. I think the easiest way for now to get in touch if they want to know more about my offerings can go to my website, akayalynn.com. And from there, you can reach out and contact me personally, and I can share more information about retreats. We do groups in Costa Rica. I also take groups down to Peru and other things. And so if people want to know more about my offerings, yeah, that's the best place to find me.
Amazing. Everything will be in the show notes. And um so normally I ask like if you could give one word for your first plant medicine ceremony, what would it be? But was that the one in Peru, the bad one? Was that your very first one ever?
Yeah, that was my one in Ecuador. Oh goodness. Yeah, that's a unique one because at that time, I'll tell you this story because at that time I didn't know much at all about the world of ayahuasca. And so we went down, I was with someone and we went down to this tiny little community in Ecuador. And I know many people, even if you haven't tried ayahuasca, have probably heard of the taste and how difficult the taste of the medicine is. Well, um, we went down there, and in this tradition and in this culture, we drank the ayahuasca, and then following that, we had to chase it with a shot of aguardiente, which is basically jungle moonshine. So it's an alcohol, and it's a jungle moonshine, and so. Um, drink the ayahuasca, drink the moonshine, and then we went into the journey. So for me, if you could imagine, I'm not much of a drinker. I don't like the taste of alcohol, and so that was my intro into ayahuasca. So if I were to give one word to describe it, I would probably say purge.
Oh, that's awesome. All the purging, just getting rid of everything with that extra shot of moonshine.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But if we were to really take my first experience that I feel like the real moment that I truly connected with the medicine, which was in British Columbia here in Canada. Um, eh, Really, if there's one/two words, I would have to say, I would say it was cosmic. It was incredibly
Mm,
cosmic. Yeah, yeah.
mm. I love that. Awesome.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Akaya, for your time and your energy and just all the wisdom that you have. I'm so grateful that you were able to join the podcast today. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to share. Let's do this again.
Oh, yes, because I feel like there's so many more stories for sure.
Definitely.